Dean, what was your favourite bit of the Cascade conversation?
I think for me was actually hearing the comments and deep felt, often prayerful responses of everybody there, and very quickly learning that you couldn't assume that you knew what anybody else was going to say. That you couldn't assume that all gay people were going to say the same thing, or conservative people were going to say the same thing, or liberal people were going to say the same thing, or straight people were going to say the same thing. And I think that was so refreshing, because it's quite easy to sort of categorise colleagues and friends or people who disagree into boxes, and you end up not then actually hearing what's being said. And I think that the fact that we heard each other was so powerful.
Yeah, I think for me it was a very moving point in our small group when we realised that it wasn't a question of what we wanted or what we thought was right. The level of sharing around the table in terms of personal stories was very moving, and people quite often said that they shared more than they thought they were going to. But then the realisation that it wasn't a case of what I wanted or what I thought was important, but the people who disagreed with my position, that they were taking into account what I could live with, and my responsibility was taking into account what they could live with. I suppose for me there was genuine dialogue, in that we didn't compromise what each other believed or ask each other to lower it to a lowest common denominator. There was genuine disagreement, but it was done agreeably, and it really was done with mutual respect. Which, if I'm honest, it surprised me how well it went.
I was really amazed that sort of nobody got dramatically upset, nobody stormed out, but it was that commitment to listen to each other. And I think sharing the stories, I think that was so powerful, that people were sharing things from their own life, their own experience, that you can't negate. You listen to how people explain it, and it's true, it's part of who they are. And actually when you hear that story, you get to know that person better, and you get then to see why they think what they think, where they're coming from. And I think sort of that sort of friendly disagreement and holding together in tension, which is actually quite exciting, I think, because when you do that and you spark each other, I think that's when you get glimpses of God, that the Holy Spirit's there, and those brushing up bits is where we get that real power, a real insight.
Do you think it could be applied in other contexts or situations? Or
I think that the model that we devised from the process, I think, does have a great value, and I think it can be modelled throughout the diocese and in congregations and in local areas, and even perhaps between sort of local ecumenical groups, and sort of discussing issues. But it's also a process where any issue could be discussed, because again it's built around hearing people's stories and how that is unpacked and how that's shared and respectfully listened to. And I think the word respect and friendship would be the two words from the process and the cascade that we had at Pilockery that would be the two powerful words for me. Going away thinking, I'm really glad I went. I'm really glad I heard what everybody had to say, and people in my group were able to go deeper in those conversations with, and with people who you never thought you'd have those sort of conversations with, or hear what they actually believed, was really mind-blowing. It was a real privilege to be in that situation.
Yeah, I think it showed there is real pain involved, and whatever happens, it's very easy to get into sort of winners and losers. And I think there was a recognition that if the tone of the discussion is damaging, and where we do, we're always frightened of the other and that which is different from us. That's probably based on lack of knowledge, lack of trust, lack of personal relationship, maybe a lack of awareness that what we hold together is more important than the things that we may differ and disagree on. But if we say, well, fundamentally we're both Christians, we both take the Bible seriously, we want to do what's right, but our conclusions from looking at the Bible and thinking about it and praying about it have taken us to a different interpretation, and we can hold that with respect to each other and almost disagree with somebody but still acknowledge their right to hold that view, then we could model something that's quite exciting and quite different. If you genuinely respect people, if you genuinely, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace, well, what does that really mean? Yeah. It means that you will disagree with people, but that still, you might not like them. I do like you. But you are called to love them, and you're called to listen to them. Not necessarily agree with them, but is there a way in which we can hold that intention, as you say, respecting each other, and saying, well, what would it mean in the future if there aren't winners and losers? But we recognise this is painful for everybody, it's personal for everybody. And we recognise that in each other, then that gives us maybe a basis for a different type of discussion, and a recognition that the tone of the discussion is as important, if not more important, than the content.
Absolutely, the tone is so right, and actually acknowledging that we live with the pain, and we see that pain in each other, and actually that grieves us because actually we care about the other person. We've got to know them, we count them as a friend, a valued colleague, and you don't want to see them in pain, but actually because of sometimes where, as you say, the Holy Spirit's led us in our belief, well, we do have that pain, and not to negate that, but to actually sometimes just live with it and rest with it. Remember, Bishop Brian always used to say it's about the two sides. It's not two sides of a coin. It's the same side of a coin, and actually how you hold that together and how you look at that. And it's not about winning and losing. It's about building the kingdom of God, and that's what we should be focused on. We should be mission focused, and build the kingdom, and actually say we're not perfect. We hold this intention. We're an imperfect church. We're imperfect human beings, but if we can respect each other and seek to love our imperfections and our strengths and our great joys and whatever, I think that can build such a powerful church in the future.
Somebody shared the picture that we talk often in terms of going on a journey, and that in respect to this particular subject, and maybe where we do disagree with each other, actually isn't a helpful metaphor or picture. And I think someone spoke about, can we make the tent bigger?
Yeah.
And using that as the picture. And I think that may be more helpful rather than the actual progression to something. And yes, we know society has changed around us, culture has changed around us incredibly quickly. So therefore it's no surprise the church is taking its time to catch up.
Yep.
And some people think it shouldn't catch up, and other people think it's going too slowly. But also for me it was the recognition that there are people in our churches who are at very different stages. Some people who are thinking, just get on with it. We've been talking or not talking for too long. And other people for whom actually the discussion has not yet begun.
Yep.
And they're really struggling as to why we're beginning this conversation. So one person around our table just said, I'm here, but I don't understand why I'm here. Because the Bible's very clear. Mm-hmm. But as she listened to the stories around the table, she realised that there was a huge spectrum of views, and not just people at various places along the spectrum, but people at various places along that journey, or in different places in the tent. And that she had to recognise, whether she liked it or not, they were still in the tent. They weren't outside. Yeah. They were in the tent.
But it's great to recognise that, isn't it? And it's, as you say, sort of people in one's own congregations will be at different places, and you're ministering to a very diverse population within that grouping, and you can't assume. And I think I'm not assuming where everybody is, and actually people being prepared to be open to listen and perhaps to change positions in whatever direction or whatever way. But actually I think, again, it goes back to actually hearing the stories of people, that it touches your heart. You might not agree with where they've got to, but you can be touched by their story, their life. And that's important, because that's important to God and important to Christ. And to see how through that, our own stories interact with each other's stories, and we build this wonderful tapestry of the human race, God's people, and we're still evolving in that and discovering what being God's people is all about. I hope the process actually just gives us an excitement and great hope for the future. And I know some people criticise the process because perhaps it's not gone as fast as they would like, or some think it's a bit too slow or whatever. But I think I'm a great believer in walking. I think walking's good for you. And I'd rather take things at a walking pace than a running pace and spend a bit more time and get it right than perhaps rush in or dawdle a bit too slow. So it's getting the pace right.
So this friend pointed out that the people who passed the creeds at Nicaea and Chalcedon were actually the grandchildren of the people who'd originally met to discuss it. And the temptation, especially in a fast-moving 21st century Western church, is to think that everything should be instant. And society has moved so quickly. I know it's not quickly enough for some people, but it has moved so quickly with such dramatic changes in the last 20 years, 10 years, that maybe the Christian response is not always to go at the speed of the culture around us, but to look for people who maybe are the weaker members of the body, and we need to look after.
Yep.
And we need to try and take as many people with us as possible, which will be frustrating for the people who want to go faster.
Yeah.
And will still be too fast for some people who want to don't want to move at all.
But if we do that, we can end up surprising ourselves by where we actually get to at any one point, and actually who the discussions we're having and how that's led us to that position. And I think being open to being surprised by God is quite exciting.
Do you think that it's possible to end up in a place where there are different integrities or different conclusions or different interpretations? Is it possible to end up in a church where we allow different clergy people to take different interpretations, because there'll be different interpretations within a charge, within an area council, within a diocese and within a province? And that was the mistake, I think, of the Covenant, was when people said the SEC thinks this, or Edinburgh thinks this, or Argyll and the Isles, who knows what they're thinking. But you can't say a diocese thinks like this or a charge thinks like this, because within our church we have obviously gay people and straight people, and we have gay people who come to different conclusions and different interpretations, as we have straight people who've come to different conclusions and different interpretations. So I suppose the challenge is can we structurally represent that in the way in which we frame legislation in the canons or liturgy, that probably will leave, if you want to talk about sides, both sides at the extremes dissatisfied, because neither will have got their way. But maybe Christianity is not about getting our way.
It's not. We're not trying to win a fight or even run a race. It's about taking it gently. And I think we do hold together different integrities and different beliefs about things in our church. And you sit clergy down and get them chatting, or we sit congregations down and chatting about a subject. Say, take the Eucharist for a start. We're going to have a whole plethora of different views on what the Eucharist is and how it should be done. And yet we hold that together. And we'd still call ourselves Episcopalians. That's one of the joys of being Episcopalian. You can hold some of this stuff together by not tying ourselves down too tightly in things, but having a degree of flexibility that enables people to rest where they are. It doesn't mean that that's where they're going to stay, because the journey for all of us changes, but actually not to actually force people into any one position, I think is very healthy.
And does that come through genuine dialogue, and how do you enable people to talk who don't want to talk, who don't want to listen, who don't want to hear the other?
You have to keep making the offer, and try to hear from them why they don't want to, because there'll be a story there, and actually valuing that, and even to say, well, okay, I value what you're saying. You do not wish to engage in the dialogue. Well, that's okay. That's your choice. Nobody's going to force you to. But should you change your mind, we can all sit around the table, the door's always open, no one's ever going to be turned away. And I think if we engender that sort of philosophy within our church, that nobody is turned away, everybody is valued, everybody has a valued opinion, everybody has valued life experience, that can be shared when they wish to. It doesn't have to be on our terms, it can be on their terms, at their time. we can walk this, we don't have to run it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know people will disagree with that because somebody will want a fast sprint, but when you're built my shape, you don't want a fast sprint. You just want to walk it.